Hi, welcome back for my third session on dyslexia. I wanted to just make a notation that the things I talk about are pretty much my opinions and are not anything other than that. I do not have any professional background into this. Is only my research and how I perceive it through my eyes as being a dyslexic person. Now, it's not to say that I'm right, wrong, or indifferent on all these things we talk about, but as we talk about certain things, they tend to open up other avenues when they come about. So, and a good example is when I'm getting ready for today's little session here, I had gone into, because we're going to talk about pictures and how I convert things in my mind to pictures and how I write and how those pictures in my mind are part of the writing process for me itself. But in doing so, I wanted to put together something for you today that just shows you the things that I can't see. And as I went through a paragraph trying to identify the items that I can't see, and I always put back in once I first do my first write, let's say. This is so I'm learning something about that process itself, and what I did learn is that certain words together create a picture as well. Interesting to say the least, that something that I didn't realize until I started dissecting my paragraph that I was working on today to present to you. But let's do this. Let's just get into this thing, and I'll explain more as I get through to that part. It's going to be in the end of the session where I'm going to put on a screen how I would use the word program, and under the review there will be a read out loud section where it will be a benefit, and I'll show you how that works in my life, and if it could help your kids or your husband, your wife, or whoever that has these sort of things, it might give them the benefit of how to get things done just a little quicker. So let's get to the point where things we read, write, or conceive in our mind converts to pictures. So that's how we process things, whether it being a just flat out picture or a motion picture or video of things, because we can create a scene, for example, in our mind where it's pretty much whatever you want, you can do it. So if you want a guy jumping off the moon in an airplane down to the ground, whatever, parachuting down in, I see all that because that's just what I reflected back to you, is what I just then saw and made up in my mind. So as you read or write, you are basically using that motion picture in your head in your writing process. Those pictures become part of it. For example, car, truck, house, boat. Those are all concrete things that just give you that visual aid up in there. So everything you write around those subjects, becomes part of your writing process. For example, if you're trying to write up a sentence, well, in some of that sentences, some of those words in there you won't be able to see, but in a sentence, you can keep them in there, and you'll be able to write them in because they're there, like tos, ands, does, and those kinds of words are things that you don't really see in your mind. So those are filler words later that you'll have to put back in if you didn't get it in the initial write-up. Because what I did was, in this example today, there were approximately 23% of the words that I identified that I can't see. That's in the simplest forms. There are other levels of words that I can't see, but because they're in a sentence, they're in with 4 other words or in a part of the sentence that creates visual aid to keep those words together. That's something I just discovered today, that there are words in that sentence, so those 5 words I can't see, but with the sentence together, it creates a visual understanding that that word needs to be in there when I'm doing it or writing it, or whatever. That word becomes part of that sentence. Now, that's not to say that one of those words in there that you normally can't see, you'll forget, because I just wrote up something a little bit ago, the word tie, T-I-E. I didn't get it in there. Well, that's the word tie. Tie things together. Well, that word was left out. So it's a hit and miss sometimes whether you can get those words in there. But when you do write, you start writing those out. You get through the first draft, and you go back in and look and see what was missed. And then you start correcting and making your sentences a lot better, obviously. I tend to have issues with the comma. I will flip the whole sentence back and forth where a comma splits, where I can't decide which one would go first. this side of the sentence or that side of the sentence. And same thing with words. When I get into words in a sentence, sometimes I get there and I don't know if I should put that word before the noun or after the noun. It becomes issues. I have this trouble of going before or after the word, so that happens quite a bit. You hear words, people saying things like we reverse things. Well, I hear a lot of that. In our minds, it is a reversing of things that tend to happen. We see things in opposites. I use the word opposite and reverse a lot in my mind, and those things happen, because we see things and our mind just crosses things over a slight bit. Now, there are good days and bad days when this happens, so it's not always there 100%. It could be there one day, you're doing real good, you're there, 75% of this stuff's affecting you, and you're writing pretty good and things are going along really well. So there are good days as well. And so when you have good days, those are days that you want to really do your creativity and writing the best you can while you have that striking moment that you can get by on. But see, those words that you can't see in those sentences, like the words but, and, no, yes, the word hate, for example. How do you see the word hate? But the only way you can understand and remember the word hate is when you put it into a sentence and you write it in the middle of a sentence, and you got that person hates me. Well, that's going to be there because, when you get that hate means dislike or whatever, all these other things, and you can visualize. Now, when I'm reading that sentence, I'm visualizing somebody not liking me, and he's angry at me, and his eyes are down on us. That's what I see, and that's what I interpret of hate. He hates me, so all of a sudden I got the eyebrows down, and I see that in my mind as hate. So you could accumulate words like that, and that hate does kind of come up with in a sentence, it'll come up where I can visualize somebody not liking me as I put that whole sentence together, and I'm visualizing who wouldn't like me, and I'm visualizing that person that wouldn't like me, and I'm seeing the eyes drop and the disgust he has because he's got that hate in me, okay? Or you see an example that there was something on a commercial or news and something that was related to a hateful thing, and that will also impress you as well. So things like that are there, but I think when you're looking at doing paragraphs and writing things as such, when I write a paragraph, I write the thing out, I go through it again, and I start trying to put back words in, and again, fixing it and putting in better structures. Again, writing is one of the most difficult things for us to do. It is a very difficult thing to do. Once you lay it out there, it's just not done. It's got to be refined, and like I say, you start reversing words. You got to try to think, where does this word belong? Because I always fight where those words belong, on the other side of a noun or something, where, because nouns are good because we can understand nouns because those are person, places, or things, okay? Because dyslexics understand person, places, and things. We don't understand those words that connect those persons, places, and things. So when you're doing something like, and a good example is you're writing and all of a sudden you left out, or you're reading something. Here's an example. You're reading something and you're going all along and you didn't see the word no in that sentence. And if you're reading along and that you didn't see that no turns something into to an opposite versus something it would have been yes to. Okay, so if you don't see no, that might be an automatic yes, and as you go through that and you get a complete different view of that sentence or whatever your directive was when you're reading that, it's going to give you the opposite view of what it really was. And sometimes I catch myself doing that because as you're going along, the sentence the next sentence didn't make much sense compared to what you read, and that blank of no wasn't in there. Then I go back and read that sentence again, and I find the no in here because that other sentence didn't make sense. Then I go back and look at it, and sometimes you miss those going backs and getting that no in there, but that no could completely turn your view of what that meaning was to the opposite view of it. So those things happen. So that's why kids or people like us will tend to reread things to make sure that they didn't slip something up. If they didn't get a good conscious effort on the read, then they're going to turn around and re-look at that again and reread it again, and which we do a lot of. Trust me, we do it. Reread, and reread. I can only say it so many times because we do it all the time because that's just part of the process. I mean, it is what it is. So I try to get it done as quickly as I can, but writing is still, I'm at a retirement age, and I still have to put a lot of effort into writing. It is a job, and something I'm willing to do only because I have to do things, and I had to do it in my career, and had to do it in my in groups that I donate my time to, and so I have to be responsible. So I have to meet some certain expectations that I'm going to be able to work at a certain level. How to put back words in here. Let's talk about that. Now, I discovered something a while back, and it just, you know, in one of my earlier sessions, I had mentioned about when I did it in class, I got more from the classroom experience than I did from the reading experience. Obviously, with those certain reading problems that I had, and that being the reason being. Now, I'm good at taking in, classes and those sorts of things, or meetings or whatever, or shows or whatever it's up in front of me. I'm able to view it, suck it in, and take it in. That's how I receive better information than reading it. So I never miss class ever, because that's where I got most of my stuff from. Not to say that when I got into college, reading, I learned how to study. Obviously, it took a lot more time than the average person there, because of the disability. And I would say go back into the rereads, and rewrites. Part of the job. It is a difficult thing, but some of the things I found was, what I do now is if I'm really concerned about something, writing something large, I will put in Word, open the Word file up. I would write, like, say as the email's real important, I wanted to write a long email or something, I would open up and I would get my Word file out, and I would write whatever I'm going to write in my Word file. And so when I'm done with that Word file, I would turn around and I would open up the area called the review area, and the review section up there is kind of far to the right on the top of your Word document. It's 3/4 of the way across your top of your page is the review. You just click on that review, then opens the screen up. Then there is a point up there where it talks about read out loud speech. Okay, key, read out loud speech, meaning whatever document you have up on that screen, it's going to read it for you, and you're going to read it. It's going to read it out loud, so you're going to hear it and you're going to see it as the words are tagged when this thing reads out for you. It's a computer voice. You will see and hear at the same time. When you go through there and your mind's already seeing the word in there, I write the word to, or even the word tie. I could see it in there 5 times, but finally, all of a sudden, on the 5th read, I find the word's not in there, but I see it in my mind. But and this stops that. When you're visually watching this or hearing this going across your computer, for example, those words, you in your mind you see it, but you're not hearing it, so that's the point. You don't hear that word in there. You see it in your mind, but it's not in your writing. Then you caught it. Then you make your correction there. Now in this example I'm going to show you, I've got 23% of the words in here I can't see off in a general sense, and there are more in there I can't see. I'm just identifying the ones that are going to be the sticklers that are going to hit me. Other words in there, like the word this, and there's no words for that, but in the combination of words you use, those words are obviously in there because, and again, they could be missed later on in the line, but most likely 80% of the time those words are going to make it in there that you can't see in that paragraph or that sentence, because you have a pretty good grasp of that sentence, because it creates its own visual picture, if it may, in order to get that accomplished. But those are words still in there you can't see, and you will miss them occasionally, like the word tie. When I wrote something out and that word tie wasn't in there, all of a sudden, there it was. I had to put it back in. So, but let's look at something here. I wanted to show you an example of how this works for, how this works for reading it down the line. So I'm going to take the camera and I'm going to bring it over here to show you what it is. Alright, so here's what I want you to see. Now I wrote this, and you can see there's some words already in there that are kind of crossed out and highlighted. They're like I say, 23% of those words. So I'm going to just show you how this works. Now I'm going back into the home page up here, and I'm going to go all the way, see here. There's the review right there on top. So sometimes it's up over here, and this because I opened this thing all the way up, so it's up on the top up here this time. So here I'm up there on review. You see right here, review. Click over to the left here, left side of the column, top here, right there, read out loud. I'm going to press that button right there. Put this down on there, and I'm going to click it.
Scouting provides several opportunities to acquire flag-related stories, so I'd like to share one with you. It began 3 years ago when Troop 329 was doing a Memorial Day flag ceremony for the Madison Meadows retirement home located here in Phoenix, Arizona. We were approached by one of the residences asking if he could give us a flag for retirement. So naturally we said yes. But he went on to say that this wasn't just any old flag he was retiring. He pulled this flag from a trash bin a few years earlier and hung onto it until he could hand it over to someone to retire it for him.
Okay, so as you can see, all these words in here I can't see. Now, I crossed them out for you, and when you read that thing out loud, and if you forgot something as you're going across, like this word in the first one right here too, that's the first word I would probably miss. Now, not to say I'm going to miss it every time, you know, these are just times that it happens, and it's not every single moment you're going to run across that problem, but it will. But I'm saying in a cluster of words, you should be able to get most of those most of the time. But then again, every time I write, like in this paragraph here, I would add 23% of those things possibly not in there. Not all of them would I'd get most of them, but there's going to be, out of this grouping in here, I'd probably miss 5 or 6 of those in there and have to go back and put them back in out of this grouping. These are my potential problems, and there are more in here, like the word several. Okay, so that's not a word you can put a picture to, but when you look at several, you understand it as, I see several. When that word comes up, I see people, multiple people hanging around, or several items, several books, or several, and so I convert those things into pictures in my mind of how I would express the use of the word several, and that would give me a way to remember it, you know, of the word and its definition for the most part. So you get a lot of these things in here that, like the word like, you over here in the second line, how do you put a picture to like? Well, like is something that I see a guy putting his arm around me and saying, well, you know, that's liking. Those are expressions of liking, you know, just things like that. So you have to do a word association or a grouping of words for a meaning for the association to keep all those words intact. But at this point, I'm going to cease it here and stop here, because I want to in the future go into a little more, some more of details of how some of this works, and this is just a good kickstart of what I see when I start to read or write. This is a good example of the paragraph here of some of the issues I have, and using this read out loud function is pretty good. So I would suggest doing that if you got children you're working with. This could tremendously help them. I would get started on it soon, because the sooner they have it and understand it, they can work with it and use it, because it will cut down their time a little bit. The time being how long it takes to do the reread and rereads, because if I can get this done in 1 read versus 3 rereads, that's a savings of some time. You know, especially because we're used to, you know, we need to, time is our enemy sometimes, because it takes a lot of it, and so we have to set a lot of it aside in order to get, you know, our schoolwork done. When I went to college, it was a tremendous amount of time trying to get it. So I'm a person that never leave things to the last minute. So I'm always, as soon as that as soon as I'm done in my next classes, I'm already on that homework because I can't wait 2 days before it's done. That's too close. I have to have it done 3 days before the class to make sure it's done, and because I have that fear of not being able to stay with the pace. So with those fears in you, you tend to try to meet those time frames when it comes to getting started on your homework, because it's 3 hours instead of the 1 hour that one person puts in. That's 3 hours for you. So if it's 3 hours for them, it's 9 hours for you to do that same thing. So those are the competing problems when you're trying to work with words and reading and writing and getting it kind of in print. Until next time, I hope you would come back and join me again on this one. I'm going to probably get a little bit more into some of the reading and writing stuff a little bit, because that's probably a pretty important part. I appreciate you stopping by and hope you return. Thank you.